everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. I want to talk a little college football. Now, it's a little bit of a quiet time in college football. Not a lot going on. For people who don't really know the calendar well, this is really about the quietest time of the college football calendar. February, beginning of February is National Signing Day. Then most coaches take a couple weeks off. Then you start to come back and plan for spring ball. Then you have spring ball. Then you have spring game. Then you have the transfer portal. You have the summer recruiting cycle, right into media days, right into fall practice. And before you know it, college football is here. So this is really a little bit of a downtime. But why I bring it up is because there was one thing that happened this week that I thought was very interesting as it pertains to the world of college football. And that was that for the first time, college football has dropped what they call their game of the year lines. A certain sports book has dropped a game of the year lines, which is basically an early look at what the point spread would be for Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, Alabama, Texas, games like that. And for the most part, I don't think there's a lot to really jump into because of the fact that I just think it's hard to evaluate these teams right now. We don't know who Alabama's starting quarterback is going to be. We don't know who Ohio State's starting quarterback is going to be. Sam Hartman is at Notre Dame, but we haven't seen him play at Notre Dame yet. On and on. Penn State, Drew Allaire is going to be their starting quarterback, but we haven't seen him play significant snaps in a Penn State uniform. So there's a lot of, situations, a lot of games on those first look lines that I just said it's way too early to even think about. But there were two that stood out involving one team that I think are completely off. So let's talk about it. The team is the Colorado Buffaloes, coached by Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. Yes, we've talked a lot about Coach Prime in Colorado, but listen, they keep making news, and I will tell you this. We got two big game lines on Colorado, their first 2 weeks, two marquee games, and I think they are completely wrong. They are a 17.5-point underdog to open the season at TCU. They are a 7.5-point home underdog to Nebraska in week 2. That is their season opener and second game. At TCU week 1, Nebraska at home in week 2. And let me just tell you this. When Betfred Sportsbook drops their first look lines, you better believe I am pounding Colorado in both games. So let's talk about it. And let me explain why. I think, first of all, I'm just going to say this. I understand that Colorado is in the beginning stages of a massive rebuild. I am not here to give you any premonition that I believe they're going to win the Pac-12, compete for a national championship, nothing like that. But what I would also say is I think based on the national narrative that I'm hearing, I do believe that people are underestimating the actual amount of talent that Coach Prime has brought to Colorado. So let's just think, and I get Colorado was terrible last year. That's the reason Coach Prime is there in the first place. But let's just talk out what Colorado has brought in this offseason. Okay. Well, they brought in a quarterback that everyone deems to be an NFL caliber quarterback. Shedeur Sanders had offers in the SEC, had offers in the Big 12, had big-time offers coming out of high school, commits to Florida Atlantic, then goes to Jackson State to play for his dad. But the bottom line remains, this is a guy that most people deem to be an NFL caliber quarterback. I'm far from a guru or an expert, but every time I've seen him play, I come away very impressed. I would argue in addition to that, despite the struggles of last season, that thanks to the transfer portal and National Signing Day, I would argue Colorado has one of the top skill position groups in all of the Pac-12. I'm not saying it's better than USC's. I'm not going to say it's better than Oregon's, which has stacked 3, 4, 5 elite classes on top of each other. But think about some of the names in that skill position group. We have at wide receiver, Jimmy Horn, all AAC wide receiver at South Florida. By the way, chose Colorado over Texas A&M and Penn State. If you're going to have to play Texas A&M, you're going to have to play at Penn State. You're going to have to play anywhere in college football, okay? Travis Hunter will get touches on offense. Beyond that, Dylan Edwards, the 4-star, was committed to Notre Dame. You have Seydou Traore, all Sun Belt tight end at Arkansas State, had multiple Power 5 offers once he hit the portal, chose Colorado. Kavosiey Smoke, running back from Kentucky, bunch of big games in the SEC. On and on and on and on and on. Again, not saying the skill position group is better than USC, better than Georgia, better than whoever. What I am saying, though, is it's probably better than people are giving it credit for. The defense. Do they have the depth of Alabama, Georgia? No, they don't. But do they have the depth of UCLA and, frankly, TCU, which we'll get into in a minute? I think it's probably pretty close to that, even if people don't realize it. The front-end guys are the names that everybody knows, and they're good, too, and I think that's important to know. Cornerback. They have the best corner in the Pac-12 in Travis Hunter. Cormani McClain. Miles Slusher was a really good safety at Arkansas who transferred in. You go on down the list. Jordan Dominic, really good defensive lineman, transferred in from Arkansas. There are other players from the SEC. There are other players from Clemson on that defense. And so I'm not here for the millionth time to sit here and make the argument, Colorado National Championship. But a 17.5-point underdog at TCU? Give me a break. Because let's think about TCU for a minute. And this is no disrespect to Gary. I was going to say, but Gary Patterson, he's gone. It is disrespect to Gary Patterson because he stunk. Sonny Dykes came in, and Sonny Dykes was awesome. So it's no disrespect to Sonny Dykes. But let's think about TCU for a second. TCU was a great story in college football. I was around them, national championship game in LA. So I spent some time around them. Great story, great group of kids, great group of coaches. I'm not taking anything away from them. But at the same time, let's look at TCU last season. They beat SMU by only 8 points. They beat Kansas by a touchdown. Kansas, by the way, a game where they had to score that last touchdown in the final 2 minutes. They beat Oklahoma State by 3 points in double overtime. They beat Texas by 7. They beat Baylor with a walk-off field goal. And even in the college football playoff, right, that signature win against Michigan, not taking anything away from TCU, but they got outgained. Michigan had a touchdown overturned, and J.J. McCarthy throws 2 pick sixes. TCU wins by 6. Not saying they didn't deserve to win. Not saying they weren't the better team that day. What I am saying is they got a lot of breaks. So let's just break it down. They finished the year overall 13-2 this season. 6 of those 13 wins were by a touchdown or less. I would argue there probably were closer to a 9-3 type team last year than a 12-0 regular season, 12-1 Big 12 runner-up type team. And now they're losing a Heisman finalist in Max Duggan. They're losing Quentin Johnson, their star wide receiver, who was a huge difference maker for them. They are losing the best running back that they had on their roster, Kendre Miller, who was kind of in and out of the lineup in the playoff because of injuries. They're losing their best running back, their best wide receiver, their starting quarterback. And you mean to tell me they're a 17.5-point favorite against Colorado? I'm sorry, I don't buy it, because the bottom line with TCU is this. Really good program, but they don't recruit the level of talent that, forget Georgia and Alabama. They don't recruit the level of talent of Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, whoever. They're not a team that's just going to replace waves of players. And I understand they were great in the portal. I understand they got a lot of interesting pieces in the portal. A bunch of them, ironically, from Alabama. I'm just not sold that they're just going to flip a switch because they played for a national championship last year. So if they're closer to a 9-3 team, let me put it this way. If they were 9-3 this year, I don't know that they'd be a 17.5-point favorite. I would, and I will, when Betfred puts out their lines, I will be taking Colorado if they are a 17.5-point underdog at TCU. Let's take it a step further. A week later, they're playing Nebraska at home. Nebraska, listen, man, I'm a child of the 90s. So Nebraska, Colorado, that gets me feeling some sort of way, if you know what I mean. Don't tell my wife about it, but I get excited. I see Colorado, Nebraska on the schedule. I get excited. And I'm genuinely excited to see the possibility of Nebraska with a first-year head coach kind of rising in the same way that I am with Colorado. I think it's going to be awesome to watch. But am I crazy? Did anyone else watch Nebraska besides me? You can't tell me that. Listen, Colorado was awful, okay? Not trying to take that away from anybody. Like, I'm not trying to pretend that Colorado wasn't terrible. But Nebraska? Here were Nebraska's wins last year. They go 4-8. Nebraska's wins. North Dakota. Not even North Dakota State, the good school in North Dakota. North Dakota, FCS, 1 win. They beat Indiana. Whoop-de-freaking-do. Indiana's terrible. They beat Rutgers by 1. Whoop-de-freaking-do. By the way, that was basically a week after a bye, the first full week after Scott Frost got fired. I think those players were fired up to play for Mickey Joseph, who obviously was the interim at the time. And then they closed the season with a win against Iowa, which statistically was the worst defense or the worst offense in major college football. And so you look at Nebraska. Nebraska is very much in the beginning stages of a rebuild as well. Nebraska isn't some juggernaut. Nebraska finished 102nd in total offense and 100th in total defense. Colorado, for the record, was 128th in offense, second worst in the Power 5 behind Iowa, and in the 120s in defense. But we all follow this stuff. We all follow recruiting. We all follow the portal. Do you believe in Colorado's upgrades or Nebraska's upgrades in the offseason? They weren't that different on the field last year. And in my opinion, Colorado significantly upgraded their talent. So, not telling you how to bet, not telling you what to do, but those big game lines are out. And when Betfred puts out theirs, I am taking Colorado plus 17.5. I'm taking Nebraska at Colorado plus the points at home. Not telling you how to bet. Just telling you, I think those lines are way off. And I think the message that I'm trying to send is not to spend your money how you want. My message is, I believe Colorado is way, way, way underrated coming into next season. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, make sure to subscribe. Hit that little subscribe button down there. Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres, Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, and all that good stuff.